Okay, so yesterday we had stopped at a place where we were discussing about the partition of India. We have already learned about how the constitution came into force in South Africa, what struggle they went through, and then we switched to the situation in India, and we learned about the partition between India and Pakistan, the creation of Pakistan, and that was a situation where India had to go through for creating their own constitution. So, despite all these difficulties, all the problems that India was facing during the freedom struggle and during the partition, one big advantage for the constitution makers of India was that unlike South Africa, they did not have to create any kind of consensus, means of or any kind of understanding about what democratic India should look like. The politicians or the leaders, the freedom fighters who had done all the hard work of getting India its freedom, they had a very clear picture in their mind as to what independent India must look like, what the people of India require. Much of this consensus had evolved during the freedom struggle, and our national movement was not merely a struggle against a foreign rule, it was also a struggle to rejuvenate our country and to transform its society and politics. There were sharp differences of opinion within the freedom struggle about the path India should take after independence. But such differences they exist even today. Even today, each and every political party that we have, each and every leader that we have, who come from different political backgrounds, they all have different ideas as to how India must be run, as to how India should look like in the future. So, but most of these basic ideas, what is there for India, is agreed upon by almost everybody. So now this work of making our Indian constitution, it did not start immediately after India got its independence. In fact, this work of drafting our Indian constitution is started from the year 1928 itself. And this work was started by Mr. Motilal Nehru. Motilal Nehru was the father of Jawaharlal Nehru and one of the founder members of the Indian National Congress. And he had drafted a constitution for India as long as 1928. Right. So in 1931, the resolution at the Karachi session of the Indian National Congress, this was before the partition, dwelt on how India's constitution should look like. Both the documents were committed to the inclusion of universal adult franchise. Means everybody agreed that each and every adult citizen of India must have the power to vote, and that vote would count as one citizen, one vote, and the right to freedom and equality and to protecting the rights of minorities. All these things, right in the year 1931 itself, each and every leader in India had agreed upon these rights. They knew that independent India must have all these rights, which should be a part of independent India's constitution. So, for forming this, for drafting this entire constitution, a group of people came together, and this group of people basically they were representatives from almost each and every state, and this group of people was called as the Constituent Assembly, right? Very similar to the legislative assembly that we have. This group of people was called as the Constituent Assembly because they had the work of drafting the constitution, of making the constitution of India. So that is why they were called as the Constituent Assembly. So as everybody understood, who is this making noise here? Yeah. So what is this Constituent Assembly? Did everybody understand the meaning of this Constituent Assembly? What was their work? Who were they? because this constituent assembly is the important part of this lesson. Okay, and almost each and every exam that you have, test that you have, this question of constituent assembly always does come in that. So familiarity with political institutions during the colonial rule also had developed an agreement over the institutional design of our entire constitution. What this institutional design is, you will be learning in further chapters. But this was the design that the people in the Constituent Assembly agreed that this is how the government of India would be designed. That means having a parliament, having a Lok Sabha, having a Rajya Sabha, and then different departments under this. That is called as the institutional design. The British rule had given voting rights to only few people. Everybody in India did not have voting rights. And on that basis, the British had introduced very weak legislatures. The laws which were existing in India, they were extremely weak. Weak in the sense because these laws were basically laws of convenience. They were applicable to a few people and not applicable to the Britishers. So that is why these laws were extremely weak. The Britishers could easily take advantage of these laws, and that is the reason why they were very weak. Elections were held in 1937 to provincial and legislatures and ministers all over British India. These were not fully democratic governments, but the experience gained by Indians in the working of these institutions proved to be very useful for the country in setting up its own institutions and working in them. That is why the Indian Constitution adopted many institutional details and procedures from colonial laws like the Government of India Act 1935. So, what this says is the Indians who were part of the British government, who were working in the British government, they had gained lots of experience about how the government needs to be formed, how the government should be run, what work needs to be done by the government for the people. So that is why all this experience became a part of the Constituent Assembly and finally also became a part of how the government of India was set up after India received its independence. Years of thinking and deliberation on the framework of the Constitution had another benefit. Our leaders gained confidence to learn from other countries, but on our own terms. Many of our leaders were inspired by the ideals of the French Revolution. You had learned about the French Revolution just last month, and in this French Revolution, you had learned about how the ideas of having three parts of the government, the legislature, executive, and judiciary, this was implemented in the Indian Constitution. How the idea of having universal adult franchise was there from the French Revolution. Again, this was also implemented into the Indian Constitution. That's the reason why we have learned this French Revolution, because this French Revolution is basically the seed, it is the root of democracy in our world at present. That is why this French Revolution is so important for us to learn. The practice of parliamentary democracy in Britain and the Bill of Rights in the US, from all these different countries who had already become democratic countries earlier, all lots of ideas were taken and implemented into our constitution. The socialist revolution in Russia, this is something which you will learn next in your history. So there was a socialist revolution in Russia, and that also became an inspiration for framing the Indian constitution and parts of many Indians to think of shaping a system based on social and economic equality. Yet they were not simply imitating what others had done, they were creating something of their own. At each step, they were questioning whether these things would be suited for our country, whether this was the best way to go ahead for our country. And all these factors contributed to the making of our constitution. So, a lot of hard work went into making of our constitution. So let us learn a little bit more about the Constituent Assembly, the people behind the scenes who were working on making the best possible constitution for India. Is everything clear till now? Any doubts by anybody?
No, sir.
No doubts. Okay. So who then were the makers of the constitution? Who are these people who were behind the scenes writing the constitution for India? You will find many Indians here, very, and in your textbook also a brief sketch of each and every leader is also given over there. So the elections to the Constituent Assembly were held in July 1946. Its first meeting was held in December 1946. Soon after the country was divided into India and Pakistan, the Constituent Assembly also divided because the Constituent Assembly was actually formed before the partition of India. And once the partition happened, those people who wanted to move to Pakistan from the Constituent Assembly, they moved towards Pakistan. The Constituent Assembly that wrote the Indian Constitution had 299 members. This can come as a one mark question for you. So, how many members were there in the Indian Constituent Assembly? That is 299 members. The Assembly adopted the Constitution on 26th November 1949, but it came into effect on 26th January 1950. And this year is celebrated every year as our Republic Day, the 26th January 1950. So, why should we accept the constitution made by this assembly more than 50 years ago? Has anybody thought about this? This constitution of India that we have was made almost roughly 75 years back. So, the people who are living today in India, do you think this constitution is right for the people who are there in India today, or is it a very old constitution? Do you think that today's citizen of India should accept this constitution? What do you think? Yeah, the question over here is, do you think that this constitution of India is extremely old and needs to be changed? What do you feel? Hmm. No answer by anybody. Most probably everybody this week. Sujana says no. You think it should be changed or it should not be changed? What is it? It should not be changed, is it? Priyanka says it should not be changed. But okay, should not be changed. Okay. Strange. I thought people would have said that no, it should be changed. Yeah, good. Dhruv says it should be changed. Okay, good. At least one person disagrees and says that it should be changed. Good. The question over here is, how can everybody agree with this constitution? I myself say that this constitution needs to be changed. If I feel it is too old. But anyway, let us see what is there over here. We have already noted one reason, that the constitution does not reflect the views of the members alone. Okay. So there is always a debate that yes, it should be changed, no, it should be kept the same. But one thing you need to remember is this constitution does not only reflect the ideas of the members. In fact, this constitution reflects the ideas of the entire nation. Not only those 299 people who made this constitution, but the entire nation must be kept in mind when this constitution is being made. It expresses a broad consensus of its time. Many countries of the world have had to rewrite the constitutions afresh because the basic rules were not accepted to all or major social groups, and no one actually follows this constitution only because it's a mere piece of paper. The experience of our constitution is very much different. Over the last half century at least, several groups have questioned some provisions of the constitution, but no large social group or political party has ever questioned the legitimacy of the constitution itself. It is an a very this is a very unusual achievement for any constitution. Means no person has said that how genuine is this constitution of India. No person has questioned that. Okay, there might be small changes which are required then and now, so that because we are advancing in many phases parts of our society. So but no single person has said that this constitution is not valid and needs to be changed. Sujana says it should not be completely changed, but some changes have to be done. Yes, absolutely right. The full thing, yes, cannot be changed. It should not be changed. There may be small changes here and there which are required from time to time because as a society we change, our ways of thinking changes, technology changes, the way we live our lives change. So that is why to go along with that, parts of our constitution also might require some kind of change here and there. The second reason for accepting the constituent constitution, is that the assembly represents the people of India. There was no universal adult franchise at that time. So the Constituent Assembly could not have been chosen directly by all the people of India. It was elected by the members of the existing provincial legislatures. So that we have mentioned about. This ensured a fair geographical share of members from all over the country. The assembly was dominated by the Indian National Congress. Majority of the members of the Constituent Assembly were members of the Indian National Congress. And because this party had mainly fought for the independence of India. But the Congress itself included a variety of political groups and opinions. The assembly had many members who did not agree with the Congress. And in social terms, the assembly represented members from different languages, groups, classes, religions, and occupations. So, even if the Constituent Assembly was elected by universal adult franchise, its composition mainly would have been almost the same. It would not have changed to a great extent. So, finally, the manner in which the Constituent Assembly worked gave sanctity to the Constitution. Means the way in which people in the Constituent Assembly they toiled day and night, worked so hard to find one of the most beautiful constitutions ever to be designed. It gave the genuineness to our Constitution. The Constituent Assembly worked in a very systematic, open, and consensual manner. Consensual manner means each and every point was agreed upon by each and every member. There was no kind of ambiguity or a debate. Everybody was happy with the points that were incorporated. First, some basic principles were decided and agreed upon, and then a drafting committee chaired by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar prepared a draft constitution for discussion. After several rounds of thorough discussion, which took place in the draft constitution, clause by clause, means point by point, more than 2000 amendments were considered, means 2000 times changes were made in the draft constitution. The members deliberated for 114 days, which was spread over 3 years, means totally for drafting our Indian constitutions, people worked in total for 114 days, which stretched over a period of 3 years. Means this is considering all the holidays and all those breaks in between. So 114 days it took for them to come out with a final draft over a 3 year period. Every document presented and every word spoken in the Constituent Assembly was recorded and preserved, and these are called as the Constituent Assembly debates. When printed, these debates are 12 bulky volumes. That is the amount of discussion that has happened for our Constitution. These debates provide the rationale between every provision of the Constitution, and these are used to interpret the meaning of the Constitution. So, till here, has everybody understood how Dr. B.R. Ambedkar was chairman of the drafting committee and how all the people together they discussed and debated, and finally all this debate was also recorded and kept for a record purpose. Okay, yeah. Okay. Okay, so now another important part over here is what are the guiding values for the Indian Constitution? What are the main points the people were thinking about when this Indian Constitution was designed? And in this also, our leader Mahatma Gandhi also played a very important role over here. In this book, we shall study the exact provisions of the Constitution on different subjects. At this stage, let us begin by understanding overall philosophy of what our Constitution is all about. We can do this in two ways. We can understand it by reading the views of some of our main leaders on our constitution, and it is also equally important that the constitution says about our own philosophy as a country of India. So, this is what the preamble to the constitution does. Let us learn this one by one. So, over here we have a few of the makers of our Indian constitution, the famous ones. Their photos and their details are also available in your textbooks. Please do read those so you will know who the important people are as far as our constitution is concerned. Some of you may have noticed that in all these photographs, no, Mahatma Gandhi is not there. Mahatma Gandhi was not a member of the Constituent Assembly, but his ideas on what India should be, what India's future must be. His vision for India's future is very clearly put into the constitution. He was not a member of the Constituent Assembly, yet there are many members who followed his vision. Years ago, Mahatma Gandhi had written an article in his magazine called Young India. There was a magazine called Young India wherein Mahatma Gandhi used to write his views, very similar to Narendra Modi's Man Ki Baat, which he has nowadays. No, in the same way, Mahatma Gandhi had a magazine called Young India, and in that he used to write his views on how India must be in the future. And he had spelled out what and all he wanted in India's constitution. Okay, so till now, the Constituent Assembly, the work that they have done and how they debated and deliberated and what went into the Constituent Assembly debates, is it clear to everybody? Is anybody having any kind of doubt about what we have learned till now?
Yes.
No doubts. Okay, very good. Okay, so till now, what we have done in this lesson is we have learned about the South African situation. We have learned about Sir, we have to write the notes. Oh, yes, all notes have to be written by yourself. You have to read the lesson and you have to write on your own. Yeah, so as I was saying, we have learned till now about the South African situation. We learned about how South Africa fought for getting their own constitution and how they designed their own constitution. Uh, and after this, we learned about the difficulties faced by India during writing of their own constitution because India was in a very difficult situation after independence, mainly because of the partition of India and Pakistan. And then there were 299 members who were selected into the Constituent Assembly. These members were given the task of drafting the Indian Constitution. And Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, he was the president of the chairman of the drafting committee. Totally, the Constituent Assembly worked for 114 days and stretched over a period of 3 years. And there were numerous amounts of debates and discussions which were held during this period, and the entire constitution was drafted and discussed and debated during this period of 114 days, and that was how ultimately the constitution of India was born and incorporated and put into and given to the people of India on 26 January 1950, which we all know as our Republic Day. Right, so that is what we will learn till today's class, and tomorrow's class we will cover the remaining part of this lesson. So, if there are no more doubts by anyone, we will conclude today's class and we will meet tomorrow. Okay, right. So, everyone, please do read your lessons, whatever we have covered till now. In case there are any doubts, please post those doubts. And summary, concept map, and a few large questions, bigger questions you can write. In case of a democratic politics, don't write the questions which are there behind the textbook, because those are not any good. So summary and concept map is sufficient for democratic politics. For your geography and history and all those question answers behind those which are there, those can be written along with the summary. If you have already written, it's fine, no problem. Yeah, if you have written, it is fine, no problem. If it's already written, it is fine, right?